So let's continue with Janua Magica Reserata, part 5. I've done so many videos about the orders of angels and the demons and so on that are in the playlist and my Enochian and also my other playlist that I will continue with this reading. Of angels good and bad, their degrees and offices. Lucifer and those other angels that offended him in ambition and pride fell not altogether into the very abysm of hell, though they fell all into the truest hell, which is punishment. Those which remained in the places between was because they had not offended with so determinate an obstinacy and vehemence as the others had, and they remained also there because it was necessary and for convenient for our merit, that we should have spirits for our enemies, and in such place where they might vex us with their temptation, for which cause God permitted a great part of them to remain here, the earth and the water, where they shall continue till the day of judgment, and then shall be all damned into very dungeon of hell, so that we have with them a continual war, which do they be in places aforesaid, yet are they not out of hell in respect of torment, for their pain is all alike. The difference of the degrees of spirits is rehearsed by Gaudentius Merula, taking the same out of Cellius, who maketh 6 kinds or degrees of spirits between heaven and hell. The first are those that remained in the highest region of the air. He calleth angels of fire, because they are near unto that region, and perchance within it. The second kind said he, from the middle region of the air downwards towards the earth. The third on the earth itself, the fourth in the waters, the fifth in the caves and hollow walls of the earth, the sixth in the very dungeon and on abysme of hell, in such sort that they are as if it were interlinked one with another. But all these spirits have duties and offices of divers sorts. For the chiefest grief and pain of the first, which were those that had least offended, seeing themselves so near heaven, is the contemplation that through their wickedness they have led so great a beatitude, and those are nothing so harmful as the others are. For those which are in the middle of the region of the air, and those that are under them nearer the earth, are those which sometimes out of ordinary operation of nature do move the winds with greater fury than they are accustomed, and do out of the seas and congeal the clouds, causing it to thunder, lighten, hail, and to destroy the grass, corn, vines, and fruits of the earth. And these are they who help the necromancers do offer use in their devilish operations. An example to this purpose I find in Malleus Maleficarum. The commissioners, having apprehended certain sorcerers, willed one of them to show that she could do, assuring her life on condition that from henceforward she should no more offend in the like. Whereupon, going out of the fields in the presence of the commissioners and others, she made a pit in the ground with her hands, making her water into the same, which being done, she stirred around the urine with one of her fingers, out of the which by little and little, after she had made certain characters and mumbled a few words, there arose a vapour, which ascending upwards like a smoke, began to thicken of itself in the midst of the region of the air, gathering and making there a black and fearful cloud, which cast out so many thunders and lightnings, that it seemed to be a thing hellish and infernal. The women remaining all this while still asked the commissioners where they could have that cloud to discharge a great quantity of stones, they pointing her to a certain place where it could do no hurt at all. The cloud of a sudden began to move itself, with a great furious blustering of winds, and in short space coming over the place appointed, discharged a great number of stones like a violent shower, directly within the compass thereof. And in this sort may the witches and necromancers make many such like things through the help of these spirits. But now to declare the office and function of the third kind of spirits, being on the earth, whose principal office and function is to persecute men and to tempt and allure men to sin, and thereby to work their damnation, envying that those places that they once enjoyed in heaven should be possessed and replenished with men. See here the devil's malice, which proceedeth only of envy. These spirits vex, deceive, and entice us sleeping and waking. To defend us from their temptation, we have an angel guardian to direct and guard us. And we have an angel guardian to direct and guard us, and we have at our left hand an ill spirit, which still solicits and allures us to sin. Their power is restrained that they cannot, in execution of their full puissance of their malicious desires, without the permission of God. A strange chance happened to a boy in the city of Astorges. A man of good quality and learning there had two sons. The one being about 12 or 13 years old, had by some fault so offended his mother, that in a rage she cursed him with a detestable maledictions, betaking him to the devils of hell, wishing that they would fetch him out of her presence. This was about 10 at night, being very dark. The foolish woman continued her curses so long, till at last the boy, through fear, went out into a little court behind the house, out of which he suddenly vanished, and though they diligently searched round the house, they could by no means find him, at which they exceedingly wondered, for both the doors of the house were locked. Around the house they searched, but could find no way for his going out. About 2 hours after, they heard a chamber box above their heads, a very great noise, and withal the young boy groaning with extreme anguish and grief. They presently going up and opening the chamber door, which they found also fast locked, they perceived the silly boy grovelling on the ground in a most pitiful manner, for besides his garments rent to pieces, his face and hands, and in a manner his whole body scratched and grated as if he had been drawn through briars and thorns, and he was so disfigured and dismayed, that he came not at all that night to himself. In the meantime, his parents caused him to be dressed and cured, omitting nothing to the recovery of his health. The next day, after his senses were somewhat comforted, and he began to recover his judgment, they asked him by what means this accident had happened to him, to whom he made answer that as he stood in the court, there came unto him certain men of exceeding great stature, grim in countenance and in gesture, loathsome and horrible, who presently, without speaking any word, hoisted him up into the air and carried him away with such swiftness that it was not possible to his seeming for any bird in the world to fly so fast, and at last lighting down amongst certain mountains full of bushes and briars. They trailed him through the thickest part of them from one side to another, with intention to kill. He had at least the grace and memory to commend himself unto God, beseeching him to help and assist him, and at which very instant they turned back with him through the air, and put him in a little window which was there in the chamber, where when they had left him they vanished away. The boy lived many years after, but remained ever after death and dull conceited, never recovering his former quickness and vivacity of spirit, taking continually exceeding grief when any man talked to him of this matter. The fourth kind of spirits are those which are in the water as well, the seas as floods, rivers and lakes. These never cease to raise dams and storms, persecuting those which sail, putting them into great dangers through violent and raging tempests, procuring to destroy and drown the ships, also through the aid of monstrous rocks and shallows which are in the sea, overturning the boats that are in the rivers, and causing those that swim to entangle themselves in sedges or woods, or bringing them into some pits or holes where they cannot get out, and by all means possible persecute and molest them as far as the limitation of their power extended. The fifth kind of spirits are those which are in the caves and vaults of the earth, where they lie in wait to entrap those that dig in mines and wells, and other works underground, whose death and destruction they covet, and procure as much as they may. These cause the motion and tremblings of the earth through the aid of the winds, which are there enclosed, whereby whole cities are often in danger to be swallowed up, especially those which are built near the sea. Whole mountains are hereby thrown down, infinite people destroyed. Sometimes the sea hereby breaketh into the land, wasting and destroying whatever it findeth before it. The sixth and last kind of spirits are those who are in the abysm and place called hell, whose principal and proper office is, beside the pains which they endure, to torment the damned souls. This place, said Job, hath no order at all, but continual fear, horror, and amazement. Apuleius, who made himself so well acquainted with spirits of all sorts, writeth that there is a kind of spirits who are always free from the strings and bonds of the body, of which number is sleep and love, whom he termeth spirits, whereby he seemeth confess that there are others which have bodies, and so thinketh Saint Basil, who attributed bodies not only to these spirits but also to the angels. Cellius is of the same opinion. It is the general opinion of all the fathers and doctors of the Church, as well as ancient as modern, that the angels, when it's necessary, do fashion and make unto themselves visible bodies for the effects which they pretend, as we find in many places of the Holy Scriptures, whether it be of air thickened, or fire, or of earth, it maketh no matter, but so it is. See what is written of the three angels that came to the house of Abraham in the likeness of the three beautiful young men. And the angel Gabriel appeared to the glorious Virgin in a most godly form and figure when he brought her the salutation. The self-same is permitted to devils in their operations, whose bodies though we call fantastical, because they vanish quickly away, yet they verily are visible bodies formed of such substance as I said before, but the same is so fine and delicate that it straight dissolveth and vanisheth. To say something of a phantasm, which had its beginning in the fantasy, which is a virtue in man called by other name imaginative, and because this virtue being moved worketh in such sort that it causeth in itself the things feigned and imagined to seem present, though in truth they are not. We say also that the things which vanish away so soon as we have seen them are fantasies, seeming to us that we deceive ourselves, and that we saw them not, but they were only represented in our fancy. But this is in such sort that sometimes we truly see them indeed, and other times our imagination and fancy so present them to our view, that they deceive us, and we understand not whether they were things seen or imagined. And therefore comes it what we call the things which we really see visions, and others which are represented to the fancies of incubi and succubi. Devils are incubi and succubi, taking oftentimes to that end and the shape and likeness, sometimes of men, sometimes of women, and commit the greatest abominations that may be, so that jointly they may procure and cause men to commit with them. Coelus Rodiginus said that there was in Greece a man called Marcus, who had a great familiarity with devils, for which cause he lived always solitary, conversing little with other men. This man uttered many of the devil's secrets, of which this of the incubi and succubi was one, and many others that for their filthiness and abomination are not to be spoken of. But according to his confession, all the devils do not use this execrable offense, but those only who are near unto us, and do form their bodies of a gross substance, as of water or earth. Saint Augustine saith that the satyrs and fauns were thought of some to be incubi, because they were so luxurious. Hence many took occasion to authorize for truth, which is reported of Merlin, that he was begotten of a devil. But this is better said than affirmed, for whether it be or not, God only knoweth. In the diocese of Bamberg there was a virgin that brought forth a son, and remained a true virgin afterwards. For whilst the maid slept, the demon defiled her. She was wholly ignorant of the deceit upon examination of honest matrons. Many advised her to marry, that she might bring forth without danger of her life. But she resolved to keep her vow of virginity, though her death might follow. When her time was come, she was delivered of a bird, and lived many years after in great devotion. The power and authority that necromancers and witches have over the devil. They constrain the devils and make them perforce obey and accomplish their commands, carrying them bound and enclosed in rings, boxes, and little vials, applying their helps such as far as they please. And such devils they commonly call familiars. The art of necromancy was used in old time by faithful and unfaithful, and in our day by divers. This art may be exercised in two sorts. The first is natural, which may be wrought through many things, whose virtue and property is natural to them, as herb, plants, and stones, and other things as the planets and heavenly influences. And this art is lawful, and may be used and practised of those that can attain to this knowledge of the hidden properties. Saint Thomas Aquinas in his book De Ente et Essentia alleged that Abel, the son of Adam, made a book of all the virtues and properties of the planets, foreknowing that the world should perish through the general flood. He enclosed so cunningly in a stone that the waters could not come to corrupt the same, whereby it might be preserved and known to all people. This stone was found by Hermes Trismegistus, who breaking it and finding the book therein enclosed, profited wonderfully by applying the contents thereof to his use, which book coming afterwards into the hands of Saint Thomas, he did there with many great experiences. One was, that being sick and troubled with the noise of beasts and carriages that passed through the street, remedied that trouble by making an image, as the book prescribed him, which being buried in the street, none of all the beasts had the power to pass thereby, but coming thither, stayed or went backwards, nor could any man be constrained to do the contrary. He also telleth of a certain friend of his who by the same book made an image, and putting it into a fountain, it caused all such vessels as touched the water thereof to break presently, which came by observation of certain hours and points in working of those images, of which they took great account and heed, to the end that the planets might be the better use of their influence in working those things which seemed supernatural. The use of all this is so lawful that nothing can be said to the contrary. The other kind of necromancy or art of magic is what is used and practiced through the help and favour of the devil, which had been long time exercised in the world. Of this the Holy Scriptures testify, speaking of the magicians of Pharaoh, who contended with Moses and Aaron, as in the New Testament in the Acts, making mention of Simon Magus, rebuked by Saint Peter, and besides you must understand that the devils may be forced and constrained by the good angels, and this is because of the grace which the one lost and the other as yet retains. None can use or exercise this art of necromancy unless he first makes a secret agreement or express covenant with the devil, and such devils with whom they deal in those covenants are not of the common sort, but of a higher and superior condition. For amongst themselves they do observe their orders and degrees of superiority, as Franciscus de Victoria asserts, and this is for the better use of their wickedness, and so said St. Thomas Aquinas. Some devils are preferred as principals to command the rest, and the inferior devils are subject unto those which are of mighty force to execute their wickedness. And therefore the Jews said unto Christ that he wrought his miracles in the names of Beelzebub, the prince of devils, so that the necromancer and magicians that are confederated with the princes and captains of the infernal army have always the lesser and inferior devils in readiness at commandment, to do their will and pleasure, being thereunto constrained by those of the higher dignity and condition. It is the opinion of St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas that the devils are not kept bound and enclosed in rings, boxes, or vials. The devils may make them believe so with whom they deal, for they are where and in what place, and when they list themselves, and how far soever they be off, yet at such time as they are called or their presence required, they come in at that instant to make answer to those which hold in them for familiars, and thinking surely that they carry them always present with them, demand or ask anything of them, who are greatly abused and deceived in presuming that they are able to hold them forcibly at their commandment, because it proceedeth not through the words of the necromancer, but through the might and authority of the higher spirits, and devils which are the captains governs and command them, yea, and sometimes constraining them remain bound indeed when they have any notable exploit in hand, but also for the most part they have them always at liberty. Of spirits called hobgoblins or Robin Goodfellows. These kinds of spirits are more familiar and domestical than the others, or for some causes to us unknown, abide in one place more than in another, so that some never almost depart from some particular houses, as though they were their proper mansions, making them sundry noises, rumours, mockeries, gauds, and jests, without doing any harm at all, and some have heard them play on guitars and Jews' harps, ring bells and make answer to those that call them, and speak with certain signs, laughter and merry jesters, so that those of the house come at last to be so familiar and well acquainted with them that they fear them not at all. But in truth, if they had free power to put in execution their malicious desire, we should find these pranks of theirs not to be jests, but earnest indeed, tending to destruction both of our body and soul. But the power is so restrained and tied that they can pass no further than to jests and gauds, and if they do harm at all, it is certainly very little, as by experience has been found.